everybody, it's Eric Paffenfuss. It's Friday, so it must be a buy day. And today our book adventures are taking us in a search for answers to one of the Western world's most enduring questions. And that is, how did Philadelphia cream cheese get its name? Yes, that's right. Now, why is this important to me? Well, it must be the Pennsylvanian. When I think of Philadelphia, I think of cream cheese. Maybe you think of cheesesteaks, but certainly 100 years ago, they would have agreed with me, and people would have thought about cream cheese. So surely Philadelphia cream cheese was invented in Philadelphia, right?
Yeah.
Well, wrong, I'm afraid.
Oh, no.
It was invented right here in the house behind me, which was owned by a gentleman by the name of William A. Lawrence here in Chester, New York. Now, we pulled off specifically to get to this historic marker, a recent historic marker. It doesn't mention that the house was his too, but the house was his. Now, the factory has since become the highway that we took to get here. And let me tell you, it's been quite an adventure to get here. So the story goes, Kathy, that one day, cheese man William Lawrence here in New York, and I sound skeptical for a reason, but he just accidentally put too much cream in his cheese. Lo and behold, he invented for the first time ever cream cheese, which he called Philadelphia cream cheese. Now, right out of the gate, this struck me as being a clearly apocryphal story, most likely invented by a marketer, probably the same marketer who came up with the guy who was carrying the vat of peanut butter and the other guy that had the chocolate bar, and then they bumped into each other, and that's how Reese's, was formed. It's something similar. People had been making cream cheese for hundreds of years before this. The question was not the secret formula. I mean, a cheese man could easily add a little extra cream to their cheese, right? That was easy. The question was, how do you get it to a major market like New York City without it going bad? Because cream cheese, unlike other types of cheese, you can't just stick it in a cave and age it for 10 years, right? No, it has to be refrigerated.
Spreadable.
It's a fresh cheese. Otherwise, it spoils. So it wasn't a happy accident. It was meticulous planning. Do you believe me on that?
Yeah.
You won't find any information online about it, but in order to prove my theory that it wasn't just an amazing apocryphal accident, I went straight to our patent books that we have at the Midtown Scholar. Now, we've already showed these on Buy Day before. We have patent books for everything from the 19th century, from bicycles to clocks to mechanical toys to you name it, to lifeboats. We've got patent books. And it just so happens that we had a patent book already online with regards to cheese and cheese making. This is the cheese patent book. It is British patent inventions and abridgments for the milking, churning, and making of cheese. Now, the date is 1874.
That's the right time.
Supposedly, the invention here was 1872. It might have been 1873. There are 2 patents by William Lawrence in the patent book. And both of the patents have to do with what? Refrigeration.
Oh, wow.
That's right. So here's William Lawrence. And the fact that he was patenting this in March of 1873 in England also shows that he's thinking about a worldwide domination of the cheese. But it has to do with the cooling and heating of liquids, and the second one has to do with the refrigeration of cheese. There are drawings associated with it, and this shows that that Lawrence had given this.
It's not about recipes,
it's about engineering. That's right. And so let's just take a moment and let me tell you a little bit more about the history of Philadelphia cream cheese. So Lawrence perfects the refrigeration process. He's able to take it to market in New York City. He calls it Philadelphia cream cheese. The assumption is, well, it must, because he's trading on those great dairy farmers in Philadelphia. I don't believe that, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Because basically the New York dairy farmers were just as good. His cows out back were just as good as any Philadelphia cow. And if you're selling it in New York City, which is where the market is, you could just as easily sell it as Chester cheese or cream cheese, or, rural upstate New York cream cheese, or whatever you want to call it. It wouldn't have to be called Philadelphia cream cheese. But after he started selling cream cheese, 2 other major cream cheese manufacturers develop in the United States. So this is in the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s. One of them is actually in Philadelphia, and it's by the Sharpless Creamery, and they are known for their butter, Kathy. They've been making butter for a long time. William McKinley is now going to make an appearance in Buy Day again for the 4th or 5th time because he loved that Philadelphia butter and he requested it for the White House. They started calling it Philadelphia cream cheese, just like William Lawrence was calling his Philadelphia cream cheese. And they even manufactured in those same square foil-lined boxes. And it was just completely copied, but it leaned into their own Philadelphia marketing. That's the origin story for the Philadelphia cream cheese that we know about today. The third company that was making cream cheese didn't call it Philadelphia cream cheese, they just called it cream cheese, and that was Kraft, and they were based out in Chicago. So you have Chicago cream cheese, you have Philadelphia cream cheese from Lawrence right here in New York, and then you have Philadelphia cream cheese from the Sharpless Creamery in Philadelphia, which really was Philadelphia cream cheese. Now, Lawrence is having none of this. He sues the Sharpless Creamery for copyright infringement because, you know, he's the true progenitor of Philadelphia cream cheese, not the Philadelphians. And you know what happens?
What?
It doesn't ultimately matter because Kraft decides to buy out both Lawrence and the Sharpless Creamery and consolidate the market and become the worldwide leader in cream cheese. And eventually in the 1920s, they basically merge their origin story. They take the Sharpless Philadelphia bucolic farm story and they merge it with the original founding by Lawrence in 1872. And that's the origin story for the Philadelphia cream cheese that we produce here today.
It's interesting the New York State Historic Sign does not mention Philadelphia.
It does. It is interesting. I noticed that.
We're
for
here in
2020,
Chester,
but he
New
did call
York.
it, we know that Lawrence called it Philadelphia cream
Yes.
cheese. So why did Lawrence call it Philadelphia cream cheese? We know why Sharpless called it Philadelphia cream cheese, but why did Lawrence call it Philadelphia cream cheese? That got me thinking. I had no answer to that. That's why we're here until a book walked into the Midtown Scholar. Of course. And well, let's see. In 1872, if you were thinking about manufacturing processes and cream cheese, you would have a different association of Philadelphia rather than just cream cheese. You'd probably think of Philadelphia first as an urban center, probably as a manufacturing center, not as a dairy center. And in the aftermath of the Civil War, you know what Philadelphia was most known for manufacturing?
What?
Ammunition.
Oh, my.
And military ammunition, specifically at a place called the Frankfurt Arsenal in Philadelphia, which is where most of the ammunition and the ordnances were created. The cartridges were created that were used in the Civil War on the Union side. Now, this book, which was owned by Lawrence, has nothing but one after another drawing about ordnances and ammunition. It's a very rare military history book. It was published in the exact right year. Let's get to the right year, which is here, which is 1873. And when you think about it, this would explain quite a lot. It would explain why the association with Philadelphia, why the cream cheese was produced in square boxes, ammunition cartridges, lined with foil. Now, when you think about it, why cream cheese didn't have to be square? It didn't. You know, it could have been any.
Circles.
It could have been rectangular. It could have been circular. It could have been heart shaped, like the cheese, the other type of cheese that they were making here, which was heart shaped. But Lawrence was referring, I believe, to the manufacturing process of the Philadelphia Arsenal.
Wow.
And if you look at those milk containers all lined up, they look an awful lot like these artillery shells would have looked at. And that was his inspiration for the mass marketing and the assembly line and everything else. Now, when Kraft bought the company in the 1920s, artillery manufacturer in the aftermath of World War I would not have had the same connotations that artillery manufacturer would have had in the aftermath of the Civil War. Bad for marketing, much better to go with the Philadelphia story.
And the cows.
And the cows of the Sharpless Creamery. All right, pretty amazing things you can find in a book. I've got one more stop. We'll see you in just a minute. We just had a beautiful drive from Chester all the way over to Warwick, New York, to the Lawrence family crypt here, which is in a beautiful historic cemetery. If you pan around, Kathy, you can see all of the grandeur of a classic Victorian rural cemetery. William Lawrence died in 1911, and his son carried on the business. Both are buried here. It is perhaps the most grand in the entire cemetery, which is befitting the fortune of Philadelphia cream cheese. But in honor of the Lawrence family and in honor of our quest to get at the roots of why it was called Philadelphia cream cheese, and I think we did that. We're going to end with a funny book.
Okay.
And I couldn't think of a more funny book or a more appropriate book than the Philadelphia Cream Cheese Cookbook. Now, I have to say,
Absolutely.
this book was a thing in the 70s, 60s, 50s, even the 1980s. Let's see when was this one
The
published.
early 80s.
This is craft from the early 80s, but we've seen it from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, about the same
Look, it's
time
got
that you have
foil.
Jell-O.
That's foil.
Yes. You still have the foiled rectangular cartridge box. We now know why that was, which we didn't know before. I like the $8.95 price tag. It seems a little expensive, but we were checking out all the cream cheese recipes, and boy, they have not aged particularly well. You actually saw a couple that you'd be willing to do, but I have to say,
Mary Cranberry Freeze. I'm going to try that.
Let's end with this doozy. Frosted pineapple salad. That's right. Have you ever thought about taking your pineapple and frosting it with cream cheese? Well, now
And cherry gelatin.
Now you can. I think, well, you got to have gelatin in all these recipes. Well, that's our bye day for today. Maybe once and forever, we've laid to rest the mystery of how Philadelphia cream cheese got its name. But I hope you'll watch next week and every week, Fridays at noon, for more adventures in the world of books.